I think that everyone's on right now, and if not, I'm assuming that they're getting ready to hop in. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Great.
Good. So I'm just pulling out my notes from our last session, and just as a reminder for anyone who's either observing or for anyone sort of that's on right now. Your last session, I think, was really technically your first IBB session for this school year, this coming contract. And you all went ahead and exchanged letters, and everyone put their issue statements forward. And so you all sort of identified what all issues you want to try to tackle as a team for this contract. You identified where you have some overlap or some duplication, and where you had some related issues. So with that, I think that you all had some things you were going to try to come back with for this session. And then see what else you can accomplish today. So Rachel, Jill, you guys want to say how you want to proceed? And do you need to do a check-in with folks before we jump in?
Sure. We've got our agenda was the Shawnee Mission School District's issue number 5. And it wasn't completely tied to NEA's issue number 5. It's a little kind of related, but we were going to start with your issue number 5. And I didn't know if, I know in the past, Stephanie, you have opened a Word doc and shared it on your screen and written down interests. We can do that. We've also have an option of doing it as a Google Doc and someone else sharing on their screen. I don't know.
Since this is the sort of first time you're really IBBing or doing the 5-step process on one of your issues, issue number 5, and because we do have new folks on the team, I'll go ahead and open a Word doc, and that's where we sort of capture the issue statement that you all should also be able to see on the form. And then, of course, we start saying, okay, why do we care? What are our interests? Why do we have an interest in solving this? And then you all start to brainstorm ideas. So I'll sort of start capturing those on the Word doc.
Okay.
But eventually, and maybe even by the second issue that we tackle today or next session, then you all should just assign a scribe or two that do that in a form that everyone could sort of see. Because if you remember, as it gets down to deciding which of the solutions that you brainstorm might make sense, it's nice for everybody to sort of have that visual in front of them. And if I do need to jump in and facilitate as you guys progress, it's nice for me to see what you all are capturing. So I'll do it on a Word doc for this first one, number 5. And then I think you guys will sort of figure out what makes sense for you so that everyone's got the visual and I can sort of get my eyes on it as well as you go forward.
Great.
And if someone wants to try to sort of do notes as I'm doing notes, that's okay too. In whatever form you want, but I'll do it on a Word doc for this one. That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And Jill, issue number 5. Yes, there was sort of issue 5 and issue 5 sort of overlap. Now that I'm looking, it was NEA number 5.
PLC, the other one's PD. So.
Yes, they are different and easily confused by
for sure.
outsiders.
Okay, so the Shawnee Mission number 5 I have as professional learning time or PLC.
Mm-hmm.
The NEA number 5 I've got marked as just discussion around professional development, and I have a note related to some survey issues.
Sure.
Or survey info. So which one did you want to take on, guys?
I think that we're going to start with the Shawnee Mission 5.
Okay.
The PLC.
You okay with that?
Everybody good?
I think my understanding is that Linda and Mike have a presentation of information. Is that correct, you two?
Yes, we do. If that's how we want to start.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
to
I
me.
mean,
Really
I
a
think-
presentation, it's just the.
And this is marked discussion as well, so you know, Stephanie.
Okay. All right, and if you all need to screen share, just go right ahead. I think everyone's got permissions on that. And if you don't need to, that's okay. Just go for it.
You just want me to kick it off?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
Linda, so I put the report in our shared drive, but I guess for broadcast purposes, I'll share my screen. Let's see if I can make this work.
I remember I had to turn mine off and back on to get this. Okay, there you go. Good.
You guys see it?
Yeah.
what happened to my, there it is, okay. Okay, so Linda and I wanted to bring to this group the Strategy 322 report and share what the elementary team did and presented to executive leadership team after about a year and a half of work. And so this is the full report. Again, it's in your shared drive. Linda, I got some talking points, but if I miss something, if you want to add, please chime in.
Sounds good.
Okay, so if you go to page 3 lists what the strategy is. We submitted this report on April 8th, and you can see right there the committee members. We had a broad span of different members from across all levels. So that was that team. Go to page 4. This is the strategy itself. And so I think you all have seen this, but essentially it's coming out of strategy 3. And then the action step is to analyze the feasibility of increasing teacher plan time, collaboration time by having secondary teachers teach 5 classes, and elementary teachers have 1 grade level planning period and 1 individual planning period. And then what was tagged on to that was that PLC piece, and then consistency of PLCs across all levels. And so the group tried to tackle all of those things in our work. Go back to page 2. I know this doesn't seem right, but we did have a lot of conversations about which direction to go. And as we began our work, we really landed on 4 basic areas. And so these are the 4 basic areas. Increased collaboration time and plan time for all levels, elementary, middle, and high. Secondary, high and middle, teaching 5 sections rather than 6. Elementary having 2 plan periods. And then consistency of PLC time across all levels. Those were our 4 big ones initially, and how we landed, we created 2 subcommittees, the highlighted ones. And so we had a secondary group working on 5 out of 7, and elementary having 2 plan periods. Okay? And then this was kind of right there, block scheduling, early release. Those were the subcategories, if you will. All right. The first part of the report is about secondary, and of course we have dealt with that, I think, as a district, and so I'm going to skip through that and go to page 22. And so if you guys want to scroll with me to page 22, we'll get to the elementary report. Which is right here. So these were the subcommittees led by Dr. Wolliver at Roseland at the time. She has since moved, and then we had those various members, of course, working on it as well. And the basis for this action committee, I think, is rooted in this one statement. So based on the recommendations of the 322 action team, the elementary subcommittee researched approaches to increase collaboration through professional learning communities without the loss of teacher plan time. Okay? So that's really, I think, the crux of what they were after. Go to page 23. And where I want to start here is kind of in the middle of the page, elementary subcommittee conclusion and future objectives. So I'm just going to touch on a few of these things. And if you guys have questions, please stop me. When compared to other districts, Shawnee Mission has significantly less PLC time at the elementary level. For example, SMSD has 20 minutes a week compared to DeSoto, who has 60, and Blue Valley, who has 40. They illustrated the importance of teachers having that collaboration time, and we did some research, or they did some research that would speak to that. They noted that a few elementary principals have created schedules to allow for additional coverage by classified specials and support staff, and so basically what we have is principals trying to figure it out on their own. There wasn't a consistent approach. There hasn't been a consistent approach. Other options they explored were increasing the ABCD schedule, all of these different things. You can look through that. The elementary subcommittee wants to increase time for PLCs, essentially collaboration time, so that they have consistency across all of those buildings. I'm going to move and go to page 25, and this was the answer. So the answer, After further investigation, the elementary subcommittee recommends the late start model to be the most feasible option for the district to consider with regards to increasing collaboration time at the elementary level. They listed some pros, more consistency between secondary and elementary late start, increased weekly PLC time, of course, that's what they're after. And then, of course, this is appealing, little to no cost for the district. Cons, they do believe that there will be a loss of instructional time for students, about 20 minutes per week, but their belief and the research would point to the fact that that is all but made up because of the PLC time and the collaboration that the teachers will benefit from. Daycare work schedules for parents and guardians, possible increased cost for parents with childcare. And so those are some potential cons to the plan. Items to consider, the district could send out a survey to see how it would impact the community. Looking at on-campus solutions for parents who are not able to adjust their work schedules and or have daycare options available, YCare, JCPRD. And this committee made some contacts with JCPRD and YCare, and there are some options. Now, is there enough slots or seats for every child that needs it? I think that's a question. B, 2 options for SMSD to implement for 21-22 are option 1 and option 2. And basically what they came up with is late start with either the kids still coming to the building or kids not coming to the building. So option 1 would be kids still reporting at the same time, and option 2, kids not reporting at the same time. I just got a few more things, guys. 6, just to illustrate what option 1 is. Late starts with students in the building. 1 day a week, teachers will have their plan time from 7:50 to 8:30. Students will arrive from 7:50 to 8:10 for normal routine breakfast. Next, students will participate in assemblies, social and emotional lessons, morning meetings offered by classified, sports staff, and administration. They wouldn't have to report, I think, as a note. So if parents can bring them at the report time of when classes actually start, they can do that. If they want to wait to walk to school, bike to school, they can do that. Buses would travel at the same time, or parents could drop them off. At 8:30, teachers would pick up their students, begin the late start day. The teacher's plan time for the late start day would now be dedicated to PLCs. So this is a point of clarification. So what the committee is recommending is that everyone's plan would be at the front of the day. The purpose is so that they can PLC within their grade bands throughout the course of the day, so their plan would now become PLC time on that particular day. Other way around. Plan time would be at the beginning, and PLC time would be during plan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This
Because
month,
grade,
For clarification,
Yeah.
I have a question.
yeah,
So if everybody's plan time is in the morning,
Yep.
there is no option of rotating PLC for supervision purposes?
for supervision in the morning, no, it would have to be handled by classified administration, support staff.
And it's,
So in a building where there might, and this is a real scenario,
Mhm.
there may only be one educational aide, period.
Yep.
There, I mean, I don't know that that's possible.
Yeah, I don't know if I disagree. They note this in their report that some buildings would have an easier time doing this than others because of the amount of staffing that they have.
Number of kids, right?
Number of kids, right. So it would be really dependent on specific building needs. So this would be the recommendation because of that desire to be able to be flexible throughout the course of the day. But I don't know if we would have to land this way. But this would be the committee's recommendation. Any other questions on
Mike?
that?
is I'm not at elementary, is 7:50 normal?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. I've scrolled down to page 28, and we're looking at what would be the immediate potential benefits. I just highlighted a couple things that I'll touch on. Shawnee Mission would be able to utilize the late start model, would be a more consistent plan for implementing a larger block of time for PLCs district-wide at the elementary level. Option 1 also has the arrival departure time for students remaining the same. Therefore, parents and guardians will not have to worry about additional childcare coverage on late start days. However, depending on the enrollment size of each elementary, coverage, support schedules would look different. So, Dr. Hubbard, to your point, there would be some problem solving that would have to take place there. C, potential consequences, again, the loss of instructional time, that 20 minutes per week. Coverage, personnel can change yearly based on FTE provided at each building, so social worker, instructional support, support staff, therefore the PLC coverage schedule may change year to year. Not all buildings have the same staffing, building availability provides similar coverage supervision, so each building plan may look a little bit different. And this would be something I think for this group, and the subcommittee really didn't dive terribly deep into it, but I know Linda, you and I were in that group, and we did have some initial conversations that there may need to be some language change in the P&A for elementary student contact time, and revisions or clear definitions for plan time, planning time frame, and PLCs. So that might be something for us to tackle. Option 2, essentially it's late start, but with students not in the building. So 1 day a week, students will not arrive at school until 8:30. Similar to every morning, a 10-minute window would be allotted for students to arrive, check in, eat breakfast. Again, report to their classrooms at 8:40. For late start days, a modified schedule will take place to incorporate all events within the elementary school day. Specials will be 40 minutes instead of 50 minutes, and a lunch will be 25 minutes instead of 30 minutes. This schedule will be similar to half-day schedules that many SMSD elementary schools currently run with shortened days. So the immediate benefits, this is B on page 29. Another immediate benefit would be a larger block of time, again, being dedicated to weekly PLCs. And then unlike option 1, every elementary building could utilize this late start model now district-wide and year to year because it is not dependent upon staffing, coverage, et cetera, since students are not in attendance. Potential consequences, I mean, we can all see this. Some parents and guardians may have a difficulty with a late start model due to the student's age, daycare options, and transportation issues. And then policy implications, kind of the same things mentioned in option 1. So this group really focused clearly on elementary, but I would tell you that our middle schools are deeply interested in this as well. So I don't know, Linda, anything that I missed or you want to add?
No, I think you covered it well. Since I was on the secondary team, did the group ultimately choose option 1? In my mind, I was thinking we landed on option 2 if busing could be arranged.
I think it depended on who you asked. If it was elementary, I think they were more in favor of option 1. They saw the burden on their families as being a real issue. Not that middle school didn't, but middle school really felt like they would have much more supervision concerns if all the kids arrived. So they had some concerns, but they also, and I would share, in talking with the principals this year, they're willing to figure it out, whatever way to do it.
Can you give me the reason why, and I think you said it, but I don't think I understood it, the reason why they would want the elementary to have their plan time from 7:50 to 8:30 instead of having that as a PLC?
I may ask John to help me with this, but so if they're all PLCing
At the same time?
it's going to be difficult for support staff to come in and support all of those different teams as they work.
Okay.
Instead of being spread out throughout the day, those support team members can hit on all of the PLCs.
But you mean like a principal or assistant principal or a?
Instruction
Right.
coach,
Instruction
intervention
coach,
specialist,
yeah.
reading specialist, math specialist.
Or yeah, Abby.
Okay.
Yeah,
sorry.
I was going to say, not that it couldn't, but I think, I do, when our teams meet, I am in those meetings working with them a lot. Not that they couldn't work without me, but it's definitely a partnership that we have. So it would be, I think, a real challenge if they all did it at the same time, because then you'd have to pick. And there is no way that I would ever be available if all the students were in the building to help anyone,
Right,
because I would be providing the coverage.
right.
So the differences between the two, one is students are in the building. Option two, the students are not until 8:30.
That's right.
Is the instructional minute loss something that has to be addressed? I mean, will that
think-
cause problems? Right, like with meeting,
The minutes?
yeah.
So the current calendar that has been approved by the board, it's not a late start every week, but it is a late start the majority of weeks. Okay, so there are some weeks where we don't have a late start for whatever reason, but that calendar's been approved, and we have set the late start schedule, and based on that, elementary, middle, and high would meet their minutes with a late start. We would still be in compliance and have all of our minutes, because that time can be counted as professional learning time, so you get it counted as half.
I see, okay.
And so we did count it that way. Our high school's doing it anyway, so if it works for the high school, it's going to work for elementary and middle typically. But we did build it with that in mind. So the current calendar would work for a late start, pre-K-12, for most, I'm going to say Thursdays because that's what high schools do, but for most whatever day, with the exception of those few when we don't schedule it.
So going back to the P&A considerations, it sounds like the contract day is not necessarily implicated.
That
It's
is
not
correct.
the contract
But-
day, it's like,
The
Student contact time,
yeah, and then,
but I don't know, is that part of,
and I'm trying to remember, and I'm just going off without looking, but I think it's secondary level, I don't know if it's for elementary that the plan, like the start of the day can't be your plan.
That's what I wanted.
That's true. Plan time has to be within the school day and not the contract day. So that's an
oh,
issue
so
with
that's why it's
option.
in, got it.
And then the thing that hopped out to me on that second one, if you're changing lunch to 25 minutes and teachers have to walk their kids down, they're not getting their 25 minutes. Yeah, right there.
Because of having to walk them to and from, they would have less than the 25 minutes.
So right now, elementary lunch is 30 minutes long. Is that correct? I should know, I have an elementary student. It is 30 minutes. And so the idea being that our elementary teachers, they get a little bit taken off the start of lunch and the end of lunch when they're walking their students, but they should get about 25 minutes in the middle of that.
I think there's a requirement for how long students are able to be sitting and eating as well, but I wouldn't know that. Like but I don't know that for sure.
There is.
Like they have to, like, I think they have to be seated for 25, or like the option to eat for 25 minutes, or I can't, there's a minute time that they have to be. I feel like I should know that, but I don't.
I think it's less than 25, but I don't know what it is. I can find out though really quick.
Yeah, option two, I think it's safe to say, requires the most changes to our current practice and potentially policy.
The other, I guess, potential contract that we might need to consider is that if students are on campus, someone has to be doing something with them.
Right.
And how do we keep that from being an additional prep? Because like, if you think about like a specials teacher, if you had them helping, then that could be considered an extra prep. I know that comes up sometimes.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think we'd want to pull, so one of our comments at the last meeting was to pull, elementary principals, middle school principals, and get some feedback from them on what it would practically look like. I would tell you at the high school level, it's essentially supervision. So, kids are in the commons. I mean, you guys can speak to that. They're in the gym, they're in the library. And so it's not a prep, it's supervisory.
I don't think you could have 450 elementary kids just sitting there and
I
supervising
don't disagree.
them.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
No, they don't entertain themselves.
Oh, they would.
Just with mischief.
And then, I guess the other issue would be is if social distancing and cohorting is still a model next year that we are implementing, then I don't know how you could have kids on campus for that time.
When the action team looked at the other school districts who have more PLC time at the elementary level, how are they achieving that?
I am not ready to answer that question. I'll have
Was
to
it
look back.
late?
Yeah, it's in
No,
there somewhere.
Latha have another part of the wheel. for
KCK
elective.
ended 2 hours early on Wednesday.
Theirs is
Yeah,
more for
KCK.
professional development
Hmm.
instead of PLC directly.
Looks like Lee Summit starts at 9:20 on Wednesday.
I
So they
think
just did it.
Blue Valley's a late start also, Mike, is that right?
They used to do
quit.
early dismissal.
They quit.
When I taught in Leavenworth, they did a late start, but it was not students on campus. Just, purely for the supervision piece of it.
Yeah, so there's a table here with comparative data.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's helpful.
I think with anything, it would be difficult at first, but it seems as though these other districts, the parents have gotten used to it in a way, right? To knowing which day they would be a late start. I'm sure they still complain. I don't know.
Or just
I
grumble
don't talk to
slightly
enough people.
We changed our arrival time by 15 minutes and it continues to be a struggle.
Earlier or later?
15 minutes later.
If your late start day is a consistent day with middle school and high schoolers, though, that makes sense because you might have the option of older siblings or at least the whole family is operating on a late start. I think it'd be crazy if we were trying to do it on a different day for families that have kids in multiple schools.
John, I'd be interested to hear from you.
I'm thinking right now as a
Yeah.
personal standpoint, getting my own 2 children to school now, or, because since my wife and I are both teachers.
Yeah, I'm thinking from a personal standpoint. I mean, with little kids, that same schedule every single morning is like, I know that's how we survive, is like, every day is exactly the same.
Option 1, I would think would be a better fit, obviously, than option 2. Speaking to teachers in my building, they were appreciative that this is on the table to have more PLC time. Some even asked me after our staff meeting on Tuesday of when's this being implemented or what's it going to look like. I'm like, oh no, yeah, we have to watch IBB. So, I definitely see the benefit of it. I really do. It's just the logistics of it.
What about the morning plan time aspect? I suppose there's a reason why that looks like that in the P&A.
My only thing on that one is if we're starting classes then at 8:30, that's usually when the majority of specials classes are getting started as well.
Okay.
So, if students are coming to class at 8:30, some grade level is going to be students in, out, pretty quick in order to get their 50 minutes of specials time
Okay.
fit in there for the day.
Or they just report.
To the special teacher?
Mm-hmm. And then,
Oh.
Yeah.
attendance would have to be done.
Right.
Obviously, since that time's going to be adjusted anyways, it looks like with the minutes, obviously that can be pushed back. Early dismissal days, we have a shortened schedule anyway, so it can be done. As long as, planning time minutes are met still.
I think in the report I saw that it would be adjusted to 40 minutes on these days. Special schedule will.
If it was option 2, right?
Oh, okay. I might have missed that.
I think-
How would we accomplish
Oh, right.
fitting in specials in option 1?
I think it's just normal because you're not starting, well. hold
You
on.
are, I thought you were starting.
You are starting at 20 minutes later. But do specials normally wait and not start until 8:30 anyway?
Yeah.
Okay, so like this, yeah. I don't think it would affect how long specials classes are.
Not as much.
You would just miss that 20 minutes at the beginning with your teacher before you go to special. If you were,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like racking my brain, I'm like, would they go hang out in the gym and play? Would they go, who's watching that? Would they
Well, and this is
read a
all
book in the
based-
library? Would they?
It's all,
500.
Yeah, they list, some social
Yeah.
emotional, things, some assemblies.
Oh, right.
Morning meetings. So that, I do think, Abby, Dr. Morgan, to your point, we would want to have a conversation about, what are really the expectations of staff during this time? Is
Yeah.
it different than the supervision that's taking place at the high schools?
I think it would have to be. I mean,
And supervision at the high schools is all done by classified staff. Is that accurate?
and administrative.
You mean during a PLC?
Administrators.
During PLC, yeah.
Right.
Our
So,
librarian might be in the library, though. I don't know. Right.
But they have WebEx PLCs with the other library.
Right.
The singletons have, their PLCs are usually district-wide.
And you will have a percentage of parents that keep their kids home because they're able to. And
Right. Or maybe the high school student takes the elementary school kid to school before they go to their.
And some buildings will have a lot of that, and other buildings will have very little of that.
A picture like a
So-
big movie screen. And they all watch a movie. I'm just kidding. Sorry, that's horrible to say.
A concern
Make sure
I
you
have with
have copyright.
option one, I'm not sure y'all can hear me from
There
home,
you go.
but
yep.
is this would have to be something that we could do for all schools, because I would hate to implement this as this way, and our larger schools can't do it, or the smaller schools can't do it because they don't have enough staff. And so we've implemented something that can't be across the board. So that, to me, is probably the bigger hurdle. My other question would be, if teachers are giving up a shortened plan time on that time, a good discussion would be, what does that 50-minute PLC time look like? Is it all principal and instructional coach led? Or are there PLC weeks where it is the work of the teachers that are just meeting and examining data and making curricular changes and looking at RTI situations? I think you can handle changing plan time, and I think you can handle shortening plan time if the PLC is got some collaborative time built in and is not just all led by somebody else in the building for 50 minutes every week, all the time, the whole hour.
Could an option be, trying to wrap my head around this, like certain grade levels start later, so there's a smaller group of students who are being supervised at a time, where like, sixth grade, Mondays, that's your later start date at 8:30, so it's only one grade level or two grade levels who are, in a gym or somewhere by themselves, while everyone else is still starting at that normal 8-10 time. That way you're not disrupting a 500 student school with every child can still be in the building. That particular grade level is just not in their classroom
Or
until a
two,
later time.
Yeah.
I think all those things are on the table in my mind, just working out the logistics, like you said. Not to get too far ahead of it, but I know the middle school principals had a similar discussion about, well, maybe we rotate week to week. And so cores are this week, specials are the next week, or whatever you do, you split your staff. And so you have that those extra staff members to supervise kids, or do whatever, do whatever SES stuff you want to do, or things like that.
But I mean, even that though would allow, if you want a PLC first thing in the morning, that would open up your instructional coaches, your innovation specialists, in order to meet
That's right.
other groups at that time and during the day would be planned time and would have to change contract language.
That's a good point.
And it wouldn't really be, like, the families would still drop their students off at 7:50, right? Because
Yeah, it would be no change for families.
That would just mean then every single morning we'd have to have staff available for supervision for,
Once a week.
Or a grade level a day.
Not if you
Two
did a
grade
grade level
Oh,
a
grade
day, it
level
would be every
day?
day.
Oh, I thought you were talking about, okay, I'm sorry.
But then you'd be covering, maybe 70 kids.
right,
I mean,
right.
that'd be an extreme, more extreme, but.
I misheard you.
Which
What?
if you're doing social emotional learning or things like that during that time, this is a non-educator speaking, but maybe then it would be able to be more specific to that age group, right? So we've got kindergarten and first grade on Mondays. We'll do something that's appropriate for that age group.
You would lose some supervision in that scenario because your special ed paras would not be able to support where they typically would be able to support. Because I might need to be supporting third and fourth graders while fifth and sixth graders need supervision. Does that
Right.
make sense? So meeting minutes, I think, could be a struggle.
Who's creating the social emotional lessons?
I believe when we would do them in the middle school during our mascot hour, I know our instructional coach usually would send out whatever, or sometimes the counselors and social workers would send out some kind of PowerPoint presentation or something like that.
Yeah, it'd be the counselors and the social workers.
Okay, there you go.
But you have a wider range in elementary of age levels and you have fewer staff members to do that.
All right, is every elementary school getting a counselor?
No,
No, okay.
they don't have counselors. Right now, they all have some portion of a social worker,
Okay,
but they don't all have a full-time social worker yet.
okay. So my thought process is like if the social worker was available or the counselor, whatever, was available to do some sort of social emotional thing with those groups, it would also help. Because I mean, technically that would still be learning time.
Is our idea that our discussion here will lead to choosing an option, or just kind of more to hear concerns and ideas?
I think the latter, to me. I mean,
Okay.
I think it's
Okay.
having an open dialogue.
Sure.
I think and also could and would be willing to get behind the language change of their,
Oh, okay.
Right,
I
because
think
whichever
so.
picked, we'd then have to come back together to discuss if there are any necessary changes to the P&A.
Right.
Is there another group still working on this?
They've had some conversations, nothing terribly formal. We kind of put brakes on it since we started going down this road here. I'm wondering if it'd be helpful for this group, for me to, again, kind of reconvene this subcommittee, share this information, have them chew it up and see what they think, and then maybe report to this group on what they think might be plausible.
Or
Principals,
Or
right? Elementary
to
principals.
me, thinking of inviting John and Lindsay into that.
Totally.
And then
Abby?
see where it kind of goes, because I'm sitting here trying to help, but I'm kind of out of my element. I think it would be good to get some more thought process heads on it and get some thoughts tied out.
The only concern when John, when you shared that idea to have like 1 or 2 grade levels go, is then I do feel like your specialist and your pre-K teachers would not be able to do that, maybe necessarily. Maybe, I don't know. Whereas like right now, if it was like Wednesday late start for all library media specialists, then all library media specialists could like collaborate. So there could be some, or sped staff, get to collaborate with other sped staff.
And I know the piece of wanting, the resource teacher and whoever else to come into those. Like, I think that's very beneficial, but I do think there might be some potential benefit to, district-wide, us PLCing all at the same time, because there would be a bigger opportunity, third grade teachers to get together, or, third and fourth grade get together and try to vertical team. Just, I know that wouldn't be the every week scenario, but I think there's some benefit to that as well.
And I'm just going to throw out there, we have to really figure out the supervision, because we cannot lay anything else on our specials teachers at that elementary level, especially those buildings where they have 22, 24 sections, and then they're doing this. And if it became something they were doing it 5 days a week, I mean, I think things have to be a little bit more specific at this point before we start changing language in the negotiated agreement.
I was under the impression that the specials teachers would also have their planned time from 7:50 to 8:30, and they wouldn't be supervising.
Yes.
That's what I understand as well.
Yeah.
So I guess it would be classified.
Unless we did a model where it's every other week that we
Oh.
split, certified
Okay.
staff, but I guess, Dr. Morgan, maybe I'll put you on the spot. I mean, as you're thinking of these two options, I mean, in your specific building, I mean, do you see one being plausible and one not, or?
I mean, it doesn't feel like any of this is plausible in the COVID world, just, being honest right now, to have a bunch of students work, I think for my own building that students would be there regardless if we were saying they could be or not, and some of them would have to be because, they don't have the supervision or whatever. I think a lot of things are possible if everyone's really committed to it, and you can find, I think the supervision would be a problem. I personally, just with how my teams work, would want the opportunity to be able to work with them while they collaborate together, and if they all did it together at the same time, that wouldn't be possible because I would be providing the supervision. So.
Yeah. That's fair, thanks.
But they wouldn't all be PLCing at the same time, right? Because they would just have their planned time in the morning.
Yeah, I was just, well, that idea kind of
Okay,
has gone
gotcha.
back and forth.
Right.
So it's just, I think specialists would need to do their collaboration at the beginning of the day because they don't have collaboration at the same time. You know what I mean? So if you would want them to be able to either A, work as a team within their own building, or B, be able to reach out to others, they would probably have to have their collaboration time in the morning, and then their planned time at their planned time.
To me, the question for each of our elementary principals would be within option one, say worst case scenario, but if 75% of your kids showed up, could you supervise, right? Could you handle it, and how would you handle it?
Yeah, because I also think this could be, I mean, I already wrote it down, this could be a really awesome time. We're always looking at trying to have clubs and stuff for kids, but we can't figure out transportation at the end of the day. So, getting some community, the MVPs in to help maybe, or even some high school students in to help run some clubs in the morning was kind of immediately where I went to kind of give some more experiences to kids. But then, then it's like, well, how could you cohort that? Or, so I think this could actually lend itself to some opportunities that we've wanted to try with kids. If you think creatively in your community, what resources you have. Or, using some high school kids or middle school students to help run some of those activities could be an advantage.
I love that idea. That would be feasible.
Right.
There are kids who do not get to participate in extracurricular activities at the elementary level particular because they don't have transportation.
Yeah.
That could be very cool.
So did we land on that I would pull the subcommittee back together, and if members of this team wanted to join that, they certainly could, as kind of be a voice of this group? I'm thinking we'd want to add some more principals too to that group, other than the ones that were already on the committee. Right?
Yeah, we're looking at population. the population of the elementary schools. Because the small, we need to have the same voice as the big.
Actually, I think more, I'd have to think about this for a second, but I think more than small versus large school, it would be based on need of the school, because support staff is allocated based on need versus, the enrollment plays in, but the weighting factors on how they're staffed are more about need. So, yeah, you're going to have, let's compare Shawnee and a Brookwood, who might have the same number of kids. Their support staff is very different. It would be a lot easier for Shawnee to be able to supervise than it would be for a Brookwood to supervise. So we would want to, I think, make sure we had a combination of schools that look demographically different based on enrollment and need.
So the idea being that group, the action committee plus some IBB team members plus some elementary principals would maybe develop a more specific recommendation.
I think I'd want to add middle school too.
Okay.
Because my suggestion would be if we're going to do it, let's do it for middle as well.
Yeah.
Do you want to have that, or do you want to have elementary, middle?
Yeah, just for practicality, it would be the same day, and if they want to break out, we'll certainly do that, yeah.
So I was just going to ask Mike, because this was really elementary focused. Has any thought been given to middle schools having a late start like high school does, which would lend itself to vertical teaming, and also for the ability to, some of those singletons that might have a art counterpart in a high school, or a language in a high school, or an Algebra 1 teacher at a middle school have the opportunity to collaborate with Algebra 1 teachers at the high school if that time is the same?
Absolutely, yeah, and that's why we want to bring, no?
Well, the time wouldn't be the same if we're still running bus routes.
Oh, I thought, yeah, well,
Because
as far
of-
as having late start, for sure.
Yeah, but high school would be already in class by the time middle school started.
Well, if the middle school teacher reports at 8:05, you'd have a small amount of overlap in the PLC, because we PLC from 7:20 to, I can't remember, because I haven't done it.
Depends on if I'm
we
in
haven't had our
building
late
or
starts.
not.
But we're
So 30 minutes?
30.
during our plan. So their
Well,
plan wouldn't be.
For elementary, I was thinking middle, I'm not sure
Oh,
what the
okay.
plan was
Middle,
with
yeah.
middle.
So would there be 30-minute overlap?
Yeah.
About,
There would, yeah, and that'd be great because there's not travel involved. For years when we did late starts and we had to travel, you got a little bit more than that. But if you had consistent, 30 minutes as opposed to 0 would be huge.
I agree. That'd be nice.
Yeah,
I
so-
would suggest we use the same day district-wide.
yeah,
As a
that's-
parent that had elementary, middle school, and high school kids on a given year, you would want the same, I would think. John, would you? If you had a middle school kid in an elementary school, which many of our families are going to have multiple levels,
Yeah, I'll have multiple levels next year.
I would think we would want to keep it on the same
I won't have
day.
an elementary kid anymore.
So I'd like to pull this team together pretty quickly so we can come back to this group the next time. Is that okay with everyone? If I can?
You think you can get it done that quick?
I don't know. If we
That's
could
pretty
get together
quick.
next week. When's the CARES meeting?
We also have conferences next week, Wednesday and Thursday.
All right, so maybe I'll back off of my aggressive stance. All right, so within the next couple weeks, we'll get them together, and then maybe our next meeting, we can report back.
Would it be helpful to have, if they do land on a plan, to have contract considerations, changes that would have to be made to maybe in our agenda know that ahead of time? Just to kind of be thinking about that and getting some feedback on that as well.
Yeah, if they just have a list going and or even suggestions for how that would have to be addressed if it's something specific.
Of course,
I think,
if Lindsay and John are on that, they can share that as well. But I just think that might be just having a little bit of thought so we can get creative juices flowing as well on that. Hey, is Scott's microphone on? Because I'm having a real hard time hearing him.
That one.
It is when I turn it on.
I'm not sitting right next to you today, so my hearing can't hear as well.
So folks, it seems like you've had some really good discussion here. Just as a point of clarification, I'm not directing or facilitating or suggesting anything different than where it feels like you all are heading in terms of the process on this. But I do feel as though at times when information comes to an IBB team from a committee to either sort of adopt or not, or sort of chew on or get your juices flowing, as Linda said, sometimes it's more vulnerable to revert to positions and traditional as you do that. So I think that we talked about this a little bit at the end of the last session, that look, this is kind of committee recommendations that you all don't really want to, recreate the wheel. You like having these options to be able to sort of, choose from. But I do want to screen share for just a moment so that you all will sort of see the difference on how you are approaching this versus the traditional IBB. But it's okay as long as you're mindful of it, okay? So I'm going to screen share some notes really quickly. Can everyone see my screen right now? So, usually for Shawnee Mission School District number 5, the issue is PLC. Usually you all would have a problem statement saying, how do we? And I think you guys do on the issue statement. And I think probably the way that Mike opened up the presentation was how do we what, right? That's the problem. Increase PLC time, get up to par with other districts, whatever. Then you all would usually move to framing and focusing the issue, which is, is it really PLC, right? And I think you all think that you know it is already. And I think the committee knows it is, right? And then normally your step number 3, and this is where you're starting to diverge as long as you know you are. Your step number 3 is usually stating, why are you interested in solving the problem? I think you all just know you want to solve the problem. I think you think the interest on why you want to solve the problem are pretty inherent to what you all do. And therefore, you've got a committee trying to solve the problem. So now what I'm hearing is, and then normally after you identify your interests, right, then you usually brainstorm solutions, right? The difference is the committee has brainstormed some solutions for you to look at. And then step 5 is you usually, pick which solutions make sense, you seek consensus, and you're sort of done. So what I'm hearing you all do, and it's okay, but it can be ripe for issues later if things get hard, is the interest that you're identifying now, they're really interest in response to the committee's brainstormed solutions. So you're more protecting existing interest versus identifying your interest in the problem. So what I'm saying there is I'm going to give you an example. The interest I started taking notes on, right? Usually the interests are in why are we dealing with PLC? Now your interests are more like, what are your interests in response to the committee's ideas? So for example, I heard Linda say, would we be able to implement in all schools? I think Linda's interest or the committee's interest is equity. There may be other interests, right? I heard someone say teachers would be giving up X amount of plan time. So what would the PLC work really look like, right? And I think the interest there is, right, either protecting plan time or not harming, right, other interests. The supervision around the kids sounds like the interest is, not putting too much burden on others. There may be other interests, but just know that what you're doing right now is you're identifying interest in response to the brainstorm solution from the committee. And that is okay. But just be mindful of, we're doing this a little different than traditional IBB. You're sort of protecting other interests that are very, very legitimate, not necessarily working around interest in the PLC. You know, so that's okay, because I think that you guys are sophisticated enough to sort of work the way you're doing, and I think you've got a plan, and everyone sort of can visualize how you continue to work through the committee and still IBB it. So I just wanted to just point that out to you. And then I did take some notes that are more like the things you guys understand deeply around some of the other interests you were identifying. So that's all I wanted to say. And then I think someone had suggested where y'all go with this. So was it back to the committee with it, with some IBB folks on the committee, or?
Yes, excuse me, yes, subcommittee's going to come back together within the next couple weeks. I think John and Kelsey are going to come, Lindsay, I'm sorry,
okay.
and Dr. Morgan, and we'll bring others on, some other elementary and middle school principals.
Okay, so this may land back on your agenda for the next meeting and or the following. Anything else on this you guys want to say? And I'm going to just sort of close these notes, and I can shoot them over to Rachel and Jill to share out, or I can just save them to my desktop to open again to see if these interests were, addressed in the further tweaking or work that the committee is going to do on solutions, whatever you guys think makes sense.
If you want to send it to one or both of us, we can put it on the shared drive.
Yep.
Perfect. All right, I'm going to stop screen sharing and then save this. And then you all, just as a time check, you have 45 minutes. So I'm not sure if there's something that more discussion on this as a final wrap up for today in terms of this topic, or if you want to go ahead and move on to another issue statement.
Well, the other one we had on the agenda was NEA number 5 as a discussion as well with regards to professional development. We could, start with the interest on that. I know Lindsay volunteered, we voluntold her to get some of our anecdotal data that we got from our bargaining unit with regards to professional development. So we can start the typical IBB process on that one.
Yep, sounds good. If you want to just read the issue statement, and then does it make sense to sort of kick it to Lindsay for the survey data, which will help frame and focus the issue or the problem?
Sure. Yeah. There's a baby.
So the issue statement that we had written was, how do we guarantee quality professional development that meets the needs of staff and students? And so as I was sorting through, just because I knew we were going to be talking about PD and PLC, the comments are all kind of mixed together. I can just read out some of them. I can share this, I'm still sorting through some of them and really delving in, but.
I think you can just read them, and if, Stephanie, do you want to open another document where you start kind of jotting down interests? You're muted, that's okay.
I'll just sort of type in the background as you all are talking, and then I'll share when we get sort of into that brainstorm.
Okay. So the data is kind of split up by different groups, so different groups of teachers, elementary classroom teachers, elementary specials, so on and so forth. And so, some of the ideas I know that came up a lot through electives teachers, elementary specials, nurses, social workers, all of that is just feeling like they're in a staff meeting and we're doing PD about reading, and they incorporate reading into the things they do, but maybe not necessarily applicable to what they do day to day in their job. I know that was something, especially with the nurses, that came up a lot, is they're getting training, but not necessarily training that goes towards what they do in a day. And then just needing more PD more in-depth training on fewer topics came up a lot. So rather than every meeting being a new topic, how do we delve in a little bit deeper and, spend some more time on a particular topic? Were some of the things that came up.
Maybe some vertical and horizontal professional development. I know there was, I think a year ago, we were trying to do some vertical professional development in the north area, and it was really difficult to find a time after school that we could all do, or we might just have had a long day or a long week, and we didn't necessarily want to do more after school. So finding days of professional development within our, calendar schedule that would allow for vertical team between middle and high, or even horizontally. When you have, art teachers across the district and things like that.
And not just collaboration, but I think something that came out quite a bit was there are times you need content-specific professional development, whether you are a counselor, a social worker, a nurse, an electives teacher. That was a big one. And another one was, it seems like a lot of our professional development has become tutorials, which is kind of a one-size-fits-all that doesn't always meet the needs of everyone, whether it be Canvas. Some of that was, some people brought up that comment with dyslexia training that that we just kind of have a one-size-fits-all approach sometimes, and a lot of self-directed.
Can you repeat, Lindsay? This came out of a poll that NEA conducted.
Yeah, our survey, that then we use that to develop our issue statements.
Okay.
And I'm finalizing everything, and then I'll put all of that into the shared drive so you guys can read through it. Like I said, it's a mix of PD and PLC, but that way you guys can kind of.
We had like an open-ended question. I'm trying to think of the wording on it.
So one of the questions was, the question was, what areas sorry, I'm reading the wrong column. What is the primary non-pandemic related challenges that prevent you from doing your job to the best of your ability?
Right.
So I just want to make sure I understand the concerns that came out of your survey. And would a high level summary be, I'm receiving training that's not specifically applicable to me or my position, and I'm getting training on a bunch of different topics, but I feel like more in-depth training on a fewer number of topics would be more beneficial.
Right.
Okay.
Or like a roadmap per se too, because it feels sometimes that it's, well, this one's here and then this one's here, and we don't really necessarily know what the goal of it is, and then it changes, every month.
Did you notice any of the members suggesting like a job embedded PD approach?
Do you mean like hiring people to?
No,
with it?
like where it would be individualized and kind of work on it through, PDC process and like personally continuing to work on that and provide time.
I think there were several people in here that were saying, I want, and I think it goes back to diving in deeper on fewer topics of then they feel like they're able to dive deeper into a topic and then really get into how do I implement that in my room versus, I know even just for myself, then when we get a new topic, it's like, oh my gosh, I want to try that too. And I feel like I can't devote as much as I would want to try, you can't try everything.
Right.
I know it's probably been 5 years or more since we went from having our kind of mid-level resource specialists. You had like a high school math resource specialists in English, social studies, science, Spanish, all the different ones. And we kind of changed from that model to have an instructional coach in every building, right, that can help you with instruction. And I think, and I have always had great instructional coaches. I think that what happens, though, is that that person at some point in their career was specifically teaching English, right? And although they do a really great job with a lot of our professional developments, I really liked having, the woman's name was Heather Amalia, I bet Scott remembers, but she was our math resource specialist. And when we got together as vertical or horizontal, we really dove into those state standards and how best to teach them and what problems we were having teaching them and who's got a good test for that and how did your data go. You know, I mean, it was just, it felt like it was more applicable when we had that model, I guess. So as far as the dyslexia training in Canvas, I think that a lot of times, or this year, it's been more maybe self-paced and online because it's kind of had to be, right? We've had to have a lot of WebEx PDs and whatnot, and I just would hope that maybe in the future when we can meet more face-to-face, that would become more of a discussion and less watching the video about dyslexia and then commenting. Me personally, I really like talking as opposed to writing as the math teacher, so.
Also, with the dyslexia one, in my opinion, it's a little unfair because that was also, we were told what.
How to do it, yes.
I mean, that was a state mandate that
Okay.
was, everybody was directed on the number of hours you have to spend. So that's a state mandate.
Sure.
And I agree with you. It would have been much better to spend that 6 hours having a dialogue, right?
Right.
But, and then, so I think COVID just made it even more difficult.
When it was freezing
on
that
top
day,
of-
right?
Yeah.
Plus the weather was like 0
Negative.
degrees.
Right.
Right.
I think also people want more options for self-directed PD available too.
Do you mean for the flex
What do
day?
you mean by that?
I agree. I love this idea of this. I mean, and the CNI team, we've talked about this a little bit about having, after school options, having Saturday options, having online options if that's the way you learn best. Because some people like the online, right? So just having a variety of those for that flex so that people could choose. If I wanted to go deeper in Canvas and I really wanted a studio, then I could choose that after school someday. So we talked a lot about that, and I really think you're going to see that greatly improve, that we have this position dedicated to professional learning. Because right now, we all just kind of share it. Like it's just depending on what the topic is, but I think with a more organized, focused approach around the 5 strategies of the strategic plan, I think that will be so much. I mean, we're looking at ideas around that to be able to kind of have a menu, if you will.
So Michelle and Mike, do you see Dr. Gonzer working really closely with the PDC in her new role? And because I think it would be really exciting if teams in schools, at some point in my long history here, we had professional development teams that really were central to developing not all parts of PD days, because yes, there are mandated things that have to, things like dyslexia, but also just normal district things that we need to do across the district. But to have some building ownership, I think helps a lot too. Be great to see that grow more.
To your question, absolutely, she will take over that facilitator role of PDC, but she will also kind of serve as that conduit between all of our different departments on professional learning, whether it be DEI, mandatory trainings from HR, CNI specific things, technology, all of that will kind of be her purview, and she will serve as that conduit from district through the departments down to the buildings and back and forth.
Course
So,
catalog, all of
yep,
those things.
absolutely, yeah.
Folks, it sounds as though you're moving into, what's in place that might sort of start dovetailing into potential solutions, I have a feeling you're going to start thinking about what ifs. So let me screen share and tell you, you guys did a really good job of framing and focusing the problem. I would like to have you, go ahead and do the exercise of identifying your interest, why all this matters. Because remember, you want to make sure that whatever solutions you come up with meet your interest or at least don't harm an interest. So the problem statement, Lindsay read it, I'll type it back in. But it sounds as though, remember when we frame and focus, I usually say, why is this happening? Or how would it look if it worked better? Or what is broken about it? So, you can see here, I just captured much of what you said. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I think it's enough for you all to be able to look back on it if you need to. A desire to have a personalized approach and a chance to implement in focused areas. Delve in deeper with topics relevant to the teacher, or more time for topics relevant. Opportunity for vertical and or horizontal collaboration. I heard Josh say a clearer plan.
Do you mean Jay? Jay Sharpen?
Mm-hmm.
Do you mean Jay?
Jay, maybe, yeah. I'm
Okay, sorry. No, it's okay.
But I'm not sure what that was, Jay. What did you mean by that?
Knowing where you're headed, maybe? Is that your...
Yeah, and just like, to be blunt.
A little louder.
To be blunt, nobody likes it when they show up for PD and it feels like it was just chucked together because today was PD day.
But just thoughtful and applicable.
Yes.
So that a teacher can sort of plan around it. So it's truly professional development. I have the word, I have content specific, but someone needs to finish that sentence.
So if I'm an art teacher, I would like to sit in PD that's talking about how I can improve my art instruction or learning more about art or, whatever that is. So just based on what I'm teaching, making sure that professional development is relevant to my specific area.
Thank you. Thank you, Lindsay. So it goes back to personalized, relevant, more thoughtful, clear plan. And then I had the tutorial development does not meet specialized needs. I also heard a little bit saying some of this stuff was a little mandated. The WebEx, no interaction with other teachers, but some of it was sort of COVID related, but not all. Folks want more options for self-directed professional development. Do you want to say more about that?
So maybe just expanding what is offered by the district kind of outside of professional development days.
So teachers have the option, Stephanie, of choosing, I'm just going to use a round number for the sake of it, 16 hours a year of training or professional learning. And so sometimes I think some teachers feel like they have to, like they're trying to create, how do I get this hours? Like scrambling, where others easily can get it. I think it depends on your content, but just having a variety, more variety, either online or in person or availability. And I think it's been especially tough.
More sources and more variety and ability to sort of mix it up.
I think it's been especially tough with COVID because a lot of them used to do Saturdays and, lots of options with their peers in neighboring districts on weekends or evenings. And obviously a lot of that has stopped. And so that's been tough, I think.
Well, and I think that can be cost prohibitive sometimes. And so if there's the ability to get it within the district and you're working with, your colleagues in the district, that can be beneficial.
Well, and I think there's some flexibility too of like, hey, this PD day, we need to have math over here, English over here, and then some of you guys go pick something from the list of things that we have available and fit something that meets your needs.
Is the instructional fair, did you get much feedback on that? Like people like that? I feel like that's the one place they can get variety. So I'm just curious with the feedback, if you received any
I
feedback.
only saw a couple comments and it was more, and I think it's just everybody's thing of, it's the beginning of the year and we get a lot and you're trying to prep. And so it's a tough time of year, I think, to learn, but I don't think anyone had anything negative to say about the opportunities that they were provided during
The only
instructional
negative I
period.
think people have is if they're not in that, if something they want is capped at like 20 people or something, That's
I'm
the
one of
only
those
time.
people that gets very sad when I have to end up on the wait list, so I get that.
Yeah, it'd be beneficial if there was some interest surveying that was sent out before instructional affairs, so that if there's a topic that's of great interest, we can schedule that more often, or, because.
We
I think-
actually do that, Linda, based on that Title II survey that goes out annually around professional learning. So we do that a little bit based on that survey.
Are you thinking
Because
like
I think,
one? Oh, go ahead.
I think there's a lot, that comes back again, I think there's a lot that's offered for core instruction, but for electives and for people like, in positions like counselors and nurses and such, maybe in instruction, maybe not necessarily electives, but maybe for social workers, counselors and such, maybe part of that day would be a half a day for them to actually, or even a session or two to collaborate with that, or create time to, I saw somewhere, I believe it was social workers said, some time to actually create some social emotional lessons or plans or events as well. So,
And so I was just gonna say oh, go ahead.
No, I just want to get in interest because you guys are starting to brainstorm some things that may come together in terms of how you want to, improve this. But I did want to say that I think Jill said back under framing and focusing the problem that you used to have either a model or a person, a faculty that was, I don't want to say more supportive, but you said something like, she provided or made available things that were relevant to help you meet standards. Was that because that particular staff person was assigned to do that? And was I hearing Mike or someone respond saying there is someone now in that role, or?
Yeah, so this was more of a, I don't know if you want to call it mid-level, but they weren't in the classroom anymore. They were called resource specialists, and then their title was based on what content area they were, originally teaching. And so whether it was one of the 4 core areas, or it could have been art or music or Spanish or, those different things. And they would coordinate, sometimes coordinate during the school day, where the teachers would get a substitute and they would come and, meet all 7th grade math teachers, or all Algebra 1, or all Spanish. And we don't have those positions anymore, but they are going to have a professional development, is it coordinator? Director, thank you. Professional development director, that's over the entire district. And then you also have, like I've worked with our math and science curriculum coordinator as well. So they're still there, maybe just less of them, so they're over more topics.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, so we have those 6 curriculum coordinators now. I guess they're split.
Okay.
And then the instructional coach model, Dr. Eber can speak to this more adeptly, but I wasn't here when the decision was made, but.
Right. This was
Yeah.
years ago.
It predates me too, but there's definitely less of them, which I think probably why it feels differently. And then the coaches aren't necessarily content specific. They are to somebody, but maybe not you, right? Depending on who your coach is.
So I'm just going to drop just a line there under resource specialists and 6 curriculum coordinators now, just to flag that maybe that will be part of some solution. I mean, I don't think it's part of sort of unpacking and framing and focusing. So I just dropped it under the brainstormed ideas you guys already started to put together. But let's go ahead and just really intentionally say, what are your interests, right? I feel like you guys have framed and focused the problem. Unless you have questions of each other, can you now say, this seems like no brainer, but it's important to capture it. Why do you want to improve this? What is your interest in making this better?
I would also just ask, do we have a way of knowing it's been improved? Like, you know what I mean? And I know you have a survey with an open-ended question, but I'm not really sure how we would know it was guaranteed. I can't remember the exact words. Guaranteed effective, or
how do we guarantee quality PD that meets the needs of staff and students? And I think it goes into also, we were doing the PD surveys, so I think that's also something, I don't know.
A follow-up from last year's?
Yeah.
So last year it was a topic, Abby, And out of that, we agreed, I think as a TA, that we would collect surveys and information. And I don't know if we even
I think we're crossing two different conversations.
Okay.
Because we're doing the surveys after faculty meetings.
Correct.
Some of which professional learning is happening, others, they are not, right? So we have that data.
I think, wasn't it after faculty meetings that were specifically PD?
Yeah, it wasn't just kind of,
Which I think is different from building to building on whether it's coming.
Hey, if that's you, I'm having trouble hearing you.
No, it's John.
Is your mic on?
John.
Yeah. You know, it's different, I think, building to building, whether you're having a PD each week or you're having just a general staff meeting.
So looking at the
So I think-
survey data that we might have now, because you're saying, how do you know if the problem's fixed, right?
Yeah, I mean, I know that, like we've identified like a bunch of different varieties into the, I guess, problem. I don't know, I'm just trying to use the right words. But how do we really define that it would, like, what would it look like if it was improved, I guess, or, you know what I mean? For who?
Like, what are the measurables that we're actually looking to?
So do we need to look at that data as we are, like we looked at the information from us, that kind of frames and focuses. Do we need to look at that data before we do interests?
Well, that's
Because I don't have access to that data.
Or would it be just as simple as knowing that there'll be a survey at the end of next year, and then you can compare last year, or this one with next year?
Because that's why I asked about the themes that are coming out. I mean, are we as a team saying we're focusing on trying to get it more individualized and maybe more in depth? I mean, is that the problem we're solving too? Is that what we mean by when we say quality?
That's what I would say.
How do we, I hear what Dr. Morgan's saying, and maybe you start with a baseline district-wide survey. I mean, we have provided anecdotal feedback from people as to what they need. So you start with a baseline survey that you would give it in the beginning of the year, and you would give it at the end of the year, and it would be something that I would think would go through that director of professional development to manage that. So
Can I just confirm, who was it that raised the issue of how do we measure? Was that,
Dr. Morgan.
That was me.
okay. I mean, I do think that the problem statement that Lindsay read, how do we guarantee, I think it said PD or whatever, that meets the needs of staff and students. I mean, to try to take that problem on and say, how do we guarantee? I think it's a really good point to say, okay, if this is how we think it should look, and we're going to say why we think we need to make it better, we're going to brainstorm solutions. Are you really saying, like, so then how do we measure and know that we have solved the problem, or that we are guaranteeing that it meets the needs of staff and students? In other words, I'm tempted to, and what I did is I dropped under part of brainstorming solutions. If it's not just a turn the switch and make professional development better, and it's going to be a bit of a process you all go through to improve it, are you wanting to just flag under brainstorm solutions that you should probably have a way to measure, to hold yourselves accountable to, this idea of how do we guarantee? Again, that's not contractual language, but it's a pretty strong word.
And is this something that you do solve and it's automatically better, or is this an issue that you constantly have to monitor? I mean, I don't know if you solve this in a year and a survey says you're doing great and you don't continue to examine it.
Well, and then to me, if I was the one being put into the PD director position, that surveying part, I would want as part of my job, to get feedback on what is going on.
I thought the same thing. I was a little concerned about stepping on that position's toes before they, or setting up a system that maybe that position didn't envision, but I also understand the need not to just keep rolling the ball down the road, so.
So let me jump in real quick. So as part of federal funding in Title II, historically, annually, we have to give a professional learning survey, which we have done in this district for probably ever, because it's a compliance piece for federal programming. They removed that statute, I believe, or the compliance piece, I believe 2 years ago, and I've asked Dr. Dennis the question, he'll respond to me pretty quickly, but we continued to do it. Even though we no longer were required to do it for compliance purposes, we have continued to give that survey. You guys all take it annually. We usually do it about coming up soon, February, March-ish. So we usually have that data, or we have that data. We look at that data. We build course catalog, courses in the catalog from that data. We build the instructional fare from that data. We look at just other options that we need to provide based off of that data. For example, the data told us that people wanted to learn online, so now we're learning online. I guarantee the data is going to tell us, oh, we don't like learning online so much, right? So I know we're constructing that survey right now to be given because we talked about it just recently, and we've added a lot of things this year, and Lindsay Stevenson and Krista Carson are working on this from the digital learning standpoint about adding questions very specific to Canvas, because we thought it was important to add that to that survey this year. So we have that data. So I think for me, I'm hung up on the guarantee word just a little bit, because we should probably start with that data as a baseline, because that data usually is really pretty good. Our instructional fare data is usually pretty good. I believe we probably have, and this is again, Darren is usually really good at sending out a survey after professional learning, district-wide professional learning, not necessarily building specific. But like after an instructional fair, you all get whatever sessions you attended to fill out a survey for, right? So we have every individual session feedback from those sessions. And so from that, sometimes we'll tell a presenter, hey, your particular breakout session was highly had great ratings, we had a waiting list, you might want to consider doing a course catalog, or a course for the catalog. You might want to consider talking to building principals about that. Or vice versa, there might be ones that didn't have such great ratings, and so we talk about that too. So I would suggest that to have this conversation, I think we need to look at some of that data, and rather than, I appreciate that you guys did an open-ended one, but an open-ended one is really hard to have a baseline of where we're headed.
Oh, sure.
Right, to how to measure. I don't know how to measure growth of an open-ended.
Well, and I don't think that was the intent of our survey, and I don't think that we want that to be a baseline, but I also think we have all these results, and so how does that get communicated? Maybe this becomes a little bit more, those results are out there, either they're, the results come back to buildings and you have a conversation about that as a staff, and build your program from there. It'd be nice to have some of that shared back with us. All that data is collected, and I know it's in the hands of the decision makers, but it'd be nice to see some of that feedback.
Yeah, we can
And
share
hopefully
that.
we will with the
I can
director.
get copies of, Darren's already responded saying, I'll get you what we have for the year.
So Dr. Hubbard, with the Title II, is that correct? With that survey, then does that data disaggregated among buildings go out to administrators? So
I don't think we have it disaggregated by building, not for the instruction. When we do district-wide, I don't think we just, because I believe it's anonymous.
okay. Oh, I was just curious because
I need to look.
I think that's, there's definitely a piece of it where the district, we all want great PD from, district-wide, but also how do we kind of hone in on what within our building we need.
Right.
Because, I feel like majority of the PD I do is within my building versus provided by the district.
I need to go look because I don't want to be saying things that aren't true. I do believe the Title II survey may disaggregate by building, but I don't think the instructional fair does.
Okay. Well, I'm just thinking more of that, like if we're doing the
building
Title
needs
II
assessment. No, I get it.
and we're saying these are what the things we need, I would think that would be beneficial information as you're planning out what your
Yeah.
year's PD is gonna look like.
And all buildings have to do a building needs assessment in their KISA process.
And we do the survey every staff meeting, but our BLT makes the questions each. Whoever plans the PD makes the questions, and then our leadership team looks at it.
I found I searched my email a lot. I found some surveys from you guys. So yeah, there's an instructional fair survey from 2019, and it does ask, well, no, it asks which fair you attended, and then it's still open apparently. But anyway, I'm just teasing you. But what I mean is that, yes, yeah, there is the instructional fair and then also I found one from the May 4th last year. So, but yeah, it would be interesting to see that as well, plus the individual, building ones.
Every building did one in the first year of KISA, I believe. And that's part of.
Okay, folks, I'm gonna, at about 13 till, I want to help leave you guys at a place where when you pick this up, you may have sort of a plan. So I'm still screen sharing. Remember, we have the problem statement. You guys kind of picked it apart. How would it look and what are the problems? You still really haven't said your interest, but that's okay. We'll go back to that, but it is important that you capture the interest. And you've already brainstormed some solutions that I think by the end of this call, you're going to pull together what are the next steps. So let me just say, the reason that I have you identify interest is to test the solution against the interest. And if you guys start to diverge, maybe this isn't going to be a topic where you diverge. There seems to be a lot of consensus already, but we don't ever skip the interest because it's a way to hold you all accountable to not digging into positions. If we can just bring you back to, you don't like the solution, what interest does it not fix? Right, so I do want you to do interest. So number 2, is it still a Title II compliance issue or no?
I do not believe it is still a compliance issue, but we still do it because we think it's important.
Okay, so tell me then, you guys just tell me, just why do you need to make this right and high quality PD for teachers, students, and staff?
Because teachers want to, educators want to improve. They want to grow in their profession. And so you want relevant professional development that meets that desire to improve and grow in what you do.
So this is meeting the educator's desire to grow and improve. In turn, what are the other interests?
A more consistent area of study. I don't know how to phrase it. So we're not bouncing from one thing to the next.
Is that more
So
a district issue or a building issue?
Probably more building issue.
I mean, I don't know that anyone, in any of the surveys, people said like, I have a problem with the district PD or building PD, specified, but I feel like reading between the lines, I feel like it's more building than, having issues with the instructional fair or, those type of opportunities that the district is providing.
And I think that you all are really digging into the framing and focusing the problem and to solutions. I want to know why does it matter that it's stable or predictable? Is it because of teacher morale? Is it because of retention? Is it because of effectiveness, right? That's your interest. You want to provide stability and predictability.
Educators also don't like to feel like their time is wasted.
So morale.
Okay, right. And
So yeah.
and wasted time comes down to respect, right?
Respect.
Usually.
Yep.
Well, and I would
Okay.
think an interest, the ability to delve into what you've learned and then apply it. I think that goes back into.
Because if you do
discussing.
that does what?
I think then you're able to really apply what you've learned and not just in one ear and out the other. You're using the professional development to actually improve what you've done.
Student learning. Would you say it's impacting or improving student learning, right?
We have an interest in growing our professional employees in an effort to meet student needs.
Yeah.
I think
Kind of
there's,
just summed it all up.
And someone help me word this, but I'm thinking Canvas, I'm thinking Skyward Training, I'm thinking you have an interest that when there's there's a new skill or a new program or a new application you're trying to learn, that you feel comfortable enough whether you are at the lower level of learning or the higher level of learning that you're getting what you need. So the interest is that
Differentiation.
yeah, there's differentiation so that those must-have skills you have, I don't know if skills isn't the right word, but applications that you have to, platforms you have to work with, maybe that's it, that you're meeting, that all learners' needs are met.
Well, that you're able to utilize those platforms to the best of their ability. I
Right.
still don't know everything that I could do with Canvas. I mean, I use a lot of different things in it, but I'm sure there's some things I could delve into for next year, make it even better.
So it's almost like the value of the return for what you are, like if you can't use the platforms that you're given, the value is not as good, right? So, and I don't want to have to overthink this, but interest are more like why do we care? Well, you care if the district is spending money on platforms that you can't totally use. It's not really a good use of cost. Are there some cost interest here?
I would say
Yeah,
yes,
because
absolutely.
definitely. If you are spending a lot of money on an outside, for example, resource to provide professional development, you want to make sure that what you are hoping to get out of that professional development actually did happen.
Okay. Can you tell me, I know I mentioned Title II, and I think Dr. Hubbard said probably no longer relevant here as an interest, but you still do it. Are there any regulatory, legislative, or mandated interest around PD?
Well, I mean, there's licensure pieces that we want to provide our staff appropriate volume, right? And meaningful professional development so they can recertify their license.
I think there are a lot. I mean, the dyslexia training is a great example of that this year, that every school in Kansas was required. So there are state mandated professional learning. There are
District level.
professional learning
District.
that pertains to compliance, sexual harassment, like bloodborne pathogen. I mean, those things happen.
Training has to be done,
Right.
and we all have to do it. Nobody likes
No, those videos are fabulous.
it. Yeah.
I think those are probably separate than what we're talking
Right,
about.
I assume we're not talking about that. I mean, I think a lot of the legal check,
I think we all
Boxes
know we
are-
have to grin and bear those and
Yes.
just get up through them.
yeah.
Okay. All right. So you guys have a lot of interest, and it never hurts later when you're brainstorming things to say, oh, yeah, and this would also help us blank, right? There may be more interest, right? But at this point, educators want to grow and improve, and everyone wants to help meet that need. Provide stability,
Buildings
predictability,
have an interest.
Yeah.
or morale and support.
Well, I think individual buildings, because I was just saying as an interest is in individual buildings, because individual buildings have, we have a 5-year plan that we're trying to carry out with our KISA that relates to the district strategic plan. But, we have to go through PD together on some of our action steps in order to meet them. So there is an interest for each building.
So the 5-year building plans are linked to professional development. Correct? Is that what you're saying?
And I would think along with that, we want to give our kids the why, like, why are we learning this? So, I think an interest would be when we're doing something, how does it tie into that plan, the why of what we're learning?
You can always add interest later. I just want to be able to test your decision on where you go with this against the interest that you identified, okay? And again, maybe where you go with your brainstorm solutions won't meet every interest, but we got to make sure it doesn't harm any. So feel free to continue to expand on that list, but I think you guys have got a good list here. It's sort of the common sense stuff of why you gotta get better at this, right? And I think everyone's got good energy around it. So here's where you have some brainstorm solutions I've already heard, and they may not be. The first thing I wrote is, is it just like, oh, here's the answer and we're gonna fix it? Or is this maybe an ongoing process of just, tuning in and getting better? So I have that just noted for y'all here. And then I just really noted that there's a lot of discussion going around your group about data, like where are we now and the resources you have where you can pull some data, the instructional fair survey, et cetera, a building needs assessment. But you all also talked about a PD director position. You also talked about the curriculum coordinators now. And does it feel as though, I may be wrong, but I thought what I heard you guys saying is, I heard someone say, if I were a PD director, I would be thinking about blank. Do you all want to know what the PD director or the curriculum coordinators are, how they're approaching this or their work so that you're not on separate tracks? Or what do you think? Where do you go from here? Is it looking at survey data? Is it figuring out where the folks that are hired professionals that are sort of semi-responsible for improving this? Is it sort of hearing from them, or what do you think?
I would think that it would be an interest that we're not, stepping in and telling Dr. Gonzer, like, this is exactly what we're going to do. Like, I think we would want this to be something that's only going to help facilitate her position positively.
Right.
Well, I think there'd be some job description stuff on, feedback for PD built into that.
And there's some very specific professional learning that should be taking place in all 5 buildings based on the strategic plan as well.
Yeah.
I'm adding some interest here, guys. The interest here is also, it supports your strategic plan. And an interest is to, I think Lindsay's saying not step on toes, but I think you're saying, collaborate and understand how you can help with the role of the PD director.
I think I hear a systemic approach. That's what I'm hearing, that some buildings are doing this, other buildings are doing this, some people are giving survey data in regards to professional learning. I think we somewhat fixed this with the faculty exit survey, but maybe we need a similar process for professional learning. That we could aggregate the data district-wide, so we would have that data, potentially.
Yeah, and like circling back to that from last year, can we see the data from those surveys, after a staff meeting that was professional development? How did it go, and that kind of thing?
Yeah. Maybe that would be a good next step.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're having some great discussion around just kind of what we all think. I mean, what if we were to dive into what those surveys look like? Maybe take a look at these anecdotal pieces as well.
I'll be very upfront there. Like, I'm going through and I'm just, anything that says PD, so there's some that are other things in there as well. But, we also have the more PD, less PD, just to preface, like, to be completely transparent that, like, even within, the wants and needs are different.
Well, if it was a consensus thing, it'd be easy, right?
Right.
Mike, were you talking about the surveys that staff have completed after staff meetings with PD?
I think so.
That's what I thought you were saying.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. That would be very interesting just to see some of that.
I will just say that our BLT has changed the survey each time, so I don't, so that it's specific to the PD.
Oh, I see, yeah.
So like each time we had it the way the questions were the first time, and then our leadership team decided they weren't getting the information they needed from the survey. So whichever team's presenting that week changes the question slightly. So we have a Google folder of surveys I can.
And the data that we do have says there were this many meetings, this many surveys were given, and the feedback, this many people respond, this % of the faculty responded. It's not so much about I've had several principals, we have 2 in the room that could answer this, but that many people aren't filling them out, that the participation of filling them out is really low. Would you all? Is that true in your buildings?
No.
Not in yours, okay.
I agree, though.
They all fill them out?
It's not, it's low in your building?
Yes.
Well, I was going to say, in some of those cases, it's probably the 2 extremes and then the people that were okay. like the people that filled it out were extreme one way or the other, and the people that necessarily didn't fill it out were like, all right, you know, which is not necessarily good, but it's still a.
I think it might be kind of interesting to see some of the questions that are coming from Shawana, though, that are, I mean, maybe they're more intriguing questions that people want to answer, you know? I
Yeah,
mean,
well, we have
especially if
like
they're
3
taking-
action
yeah.
teams that present the different step depending on, and so they just decide which questions they want to, and then they usually lead their next PD with, here were some questions that were given to us last time, so they kind of start the next PD with trying to address the questions that were asked.
I really appreciate that though, like, so that afterwards, you know, your team is taking what you guys did and then how do we build on it and how do we grow? So I think that's really neat to hear.
So folks, I'm going to give you a time check. You all do try to, you know, start on time, end on time. I'm fine going, but I also know that, you know, you all have the desire to try to end on time. So does anyone want to take a stab at what is your to-do list to come back to this? What information or what would be the first steps for you all to start putting together a plan to get your get on track in terms of where's the baseline on personal development, and then go from there?
Sure. I think seeing data from the surveys that were given in the buildings, but also maybe data from surveys that were given district-wide, like the ones that I think Michelle was referring to that maybe Darren had given out. That could be a next step. I didn't actually end up answering this from you, Stephanie, but I would like to hear from, if possible, our new professional development director or any of the curriculum coordinators, and just, I guess, their visions of how our professional development's going, or maybe their ideas on, you know, how they could make it more, what's the word we're looking for, more relative, you know, to your specific content area. Because I don't want to step on their toes and say, this is our problems and this is how you're going to fix it and here you go.
I think it also is a dialogue of, like, how are we doing, you know? What can we work on? Just keeping that communication going of, is this going well?
Right. But then also, I think you suggested, Michelle, having a survey like what we were doing after the staff meeting, but have one after building professional developments. I think that's great. That'd be great.
So who wants to take these assignments in terms of what needs to come back to this group and when?
Well, I don't have access to the data for the surveys, so.
And just to be clear, I think you guys decided, like Dr. Hubbard said, it's a systemic approach maybe to PD. So it's not like you guys brainstormed your solutions and now you're going to point to the one that's going to fix it. What I think you guys have consensus around, without it being formal, right? We're still sort of working this one, is hear from others that have some responsibility around this, right? So it's a two-way conversation and you're not sort of stepping on toes or et cetera, right? And it couldn't hurt. And then also try to see what information you can pull in to get a bit of a baseline that might, those two pieces of information might form where you guys might want to focus in on this, or maybe something that you continue to measure and watch, maybe small adjustments, you know, and sort of see where that goes. So this may be something that's not going to necessarily be, okay, TA at the end of next session. It seems to me like you just want more info at this point and figure out a baseline. Am I right about that?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think that's a good assessment. I think it's unique in that we have this new position coming on this next year. And so to get too far ahead of that work, I don't know if it would serve us well. I think maybe it would be us, this group, diving into data and providing that new position. Hey, this is what we have seen, or this is kind of the feel of some of our staff. Run with it. and then come back to us in a
And-
year.
And given some feedback into that of like, hey, these are some things that we've noticed some issues with, make sure you're aware of this.
Right.
Right.
You guys worded it under your interest, collaborate and understand how we can help the role of the PD director. And maybe the PD director wants to come back and watch this session, you know? I don't know if you've hired for that position or not, but you guys were pretty transparent and
Yeah, I
put
think
a
it
lot
would be
out.
important for
I
Dr.
would wanna see
Gonzer to
this.
have information about this session and what came out from it.
Okay, I'm assuming Lindsay and or Rachel are taking over notes at this point. I did the 5-step notes that I'm going to send over to Rachel and Jill like I always do. I'll save them on my desktop in case we need to pick this back up. And then my only note I have from your PLC conversation, the district number 5 is, I understand the committee's going to do some more focusing in. I think the 2 biggest concerns I was hearing from everyone is student supervision and what does the PLC time look like? So if that helps them to focus, right? So these 2 issues will come back at the beginning of our next agenda, guys, perhaps. And then also, if you want to decide now if there's another issue we can take on for the next meeting, if there needs to be some prep done for that, or is there something that's tied to these 2 that naturally will come next? What do you think about your next agenda?
I would think we wouldn't be coming back to
Mike,
PLC.
or phone, not Mike, microphone.
Sorry, I would, I'm assuming we wouldn't be coming back to PLCs next time. You probably need more time. Okay.
Yep.
But we could look at professional development data from surveys. But I would think we would also want to pick another one to start with, another issue statement to start with.
Is everybody looking at the list? And does staff meetings, NEA number 3, tie into this? It was listed as discussion. And there was a need for survey data.
I think it just tied in with us wanting to look at
The data.
the
survey.
data,
Yeah.
and so if we're bringing that in next time.
Yeah, that's true. I guess that would be related, because if we are going to look at the data from the surveys after our staff meetings, that would be what we were asking for on issue statement number 3.
Since that's just kind of a review of last year, do we want to add one of
Yeah.
the district? Do you guys have a next one that's kind of one you'd like to tackle?
Let me pull up our issue statements here. I mean, I think,
We have grievance procedure on the district's issue statements, resignations.
I mean, the 2 that we listed are
Okay. And then the adequate staffing on high usage dates.
I think the resignation one might be the most time-sensitive one, but unless you're thinking get it in place for a year from now.
No,
But-
I think it would have to be from a year from now, but I know that. I'm sorry, I think it would have to be a year from now, but, I know that that's an important one for us because it's been a challenge, that's been on the table for a while, or been problematic for a while. I assume, I mean, in terms of anything we would need to discuss, I don't think there's any major, I mean, I think Dr. Schumacher could kind of share
I might be
what the
able-
challenges are.
Yeah, I mean, in general terms, I can certainly do that, but I might be able to pull some empirical information on,
Okay,
historical late resignations you had over the course of 3 years, 4 years, something like that.
just the numbers. Okay, so that,
And like it might be helpful too for what you can, layers of what you consider to be late. You know, is your big critical issue when it's June, July? Is it more critical when you're talking mid-year? Or are there challenges both? Which I'm sure there are, but, there's difference between when someone resigns, in October or January, where it's, as opposed to, I mean, there's problems both, but that might just be interesting as well, because,
Yeah, we'll see.
and
if we
maybe it
can-
doesn't, but if it does, it'd be interesting to hear.
Yeah, they all stink, but,
I think that's where the brainstorming comes in. 'Cause we
Yeah.
can all, we struggle with issues, but if I'm John and my sixth grade team member just quit, then it's a different set of issues for a classroom teacher when someone resigns in the middle of the year, right? So I think that's where that brainstorming is really going to be powerful, because we're going to see it from both sides.
What number is late resignations?
2.
And what was the NEA issue?
It was number
meeting.
3,
Okay.
and we were saying it was a discussion about the issue from last year.
You guys, I'm sorry, but I need to exit. I have another meeting, and if I don't transition, I won't make it to the Zoom meeting on
Okay.
time. So-
Yeah.
What, from an agenda standpoint, what do you guys feel like? I think the review of the data could potentially be like something to review off the bat. I don't know. What do you guys think makes sense
What
to do?
specific date, are you wanting like buildings to submit their specific data?
There was
from
like
the
a
surveys?
district, there was like a specific district link, correct, that you guys were doing with
Each
staff?
building did their own. Like, each building took that and made it their own, so it's not linked to one survey. From
Is
what
there a
I
way we can like
understand.
summarize that or like?
Or if a couple people want to, whoever's getting the data could pick a couple folks that
So
can.
I'll try to
look.
speak for Dr. Hubbard a little bit. I know that her team put that basic survey together. And I think Dr. Dennis and Dr. Gilhouse kind of led that effort. So if it's okay, I'll take the lead on touching base with the two of them, and we'll see what we can pull together. We'll pull
And
something together.
it'd be nice to know if there are all these tailor-made individual data points, is that information making its way beyond the building to the district level to see if that problem has been resolved?
Because I think our NEA SM3 was more like, let's look at the data, and if people feel like staff meetings are more relevant,
Great.
then great, like that problem is, off the
Work being
table.
worked
We
on.
just didn't want it
Leave it
to
hanging.
disappear, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so what if we tentatively plan to review that data and then IBB late resignations? And then if there's some problem with gathering it, I mean, we have 2 weeks, so I think we can do it, but I feel like I know we're piling a lot of homework on you, Dr. Schumacher.
Well, I'm going to delegate it, so.
Okay. As every good leader does.
We'll give you a status update if it doesn't look like we're going to be able to put
Okay.
together what I think.
And
this
if you
group
think
wants.
it makes sense to go ahead and share a summary or some data that folks can get their eyes on so that you're just, quicker to the conversation when you all start, I think no one would be opposed to that. You'll still want to sort of process it together, but it may help for people to orient themselves to what data you can provide, just in terms of using your hour and 45 minutes next time. And if not, just, you can just present it at the beginning, whatever.
Okay.
So Rachel, will you send out that agenda? And I'm sending the Ring Central now, and I've already sent you the notes for both NEA number 5 and Shawnee Mission number 5. I've sent to Rachel and Jill.
Yeah.
And I'm sending Ring Central for March 11th, correct?
Yes, March 11th. It's the same
Okay.
dates next month as it was this month.
Okay.
I like it when I
And you guys can talk about communication if you need to. And I guess if you're all together, I could drop off, or Linda's on Ring Central. Should I just leave and so Linda can hang on if you need to still talk? Because if I drop, I think I drop the people that are not in the room with you.
I think we're good. Yeah, I think we're good.
I think we're fine.
All
I think we're
right.
fine.
See you guys in a few weeks.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.